Hello, this is Professor Scott Applegate. Welcome to PSCS 6248, Introduction to Cyber Conflict. This is Unit 7, Lesson 1, Other National Perspectives. Agenda. In this lesson, we will consider the evolution of cybersecurity and cyber operations programs in two other nations, Japan and the United Kingdom. Introduction. This presentation will detail the perspectives of two other nations in regards to cybersecurity and cyber conflict, Japan and the United Kingdom. In the United States, cybersecurity and cyber operations programs grew largely out of both the military and intelligence communities. The growth and evolution of these programs has also been largely constrained by the U.S. constitutional and domestic law restrictions, which separate certain powers between the military, intelligence, and law enforcement communities. Laws, policies, and organizational structures in the United States have also been shaped by nearly 30 years of cyber espionage incidents, many of which served as wake-up calls to policymakers in the U.S. Other countries who have evolved cybersecurity and cyber operations programs have done so based on their own cultural perspectives, history, and legal environments. Unlike the United States, the origins of cybersecurity and cyber policy in Japan are rooted heavily in its business community. Unlike many Western governments, Japan did not link cybersecurity to national security issues until very recently. The development of Japan's cybersecurity policies were largely divorced from its military and intelligence community, especially given constitutional restrictions imposed on Japan after World War II. The United Kingdom has a long history of information warfare, code breaking, and direct ties to the creation of the World Wide Web. The origins of UK cybersecurity policy have been heavily influenced by its defense and intelligence communities and remain so to this day, with the British intelligence community forming the core of both its cybersecurity and cyber operations programs. In the last 2 or 3 years, the UK has completely overhauled its cybersecurity and cyber operations programs with the release of a new national cybersecurity strategy and reorganization of many of its organizational structures. Japan. Cybersecurity in Japan developed from interaction between the two distinct spheres of government and private industry. Japan has faced many of the same challenges that the US has in terms of balancing regulatory effort against private innovation. However, Japan has an additional unique restriction in its constitution, which only allows it to develop military forces for self-defense. This restriction was placed on Japan in the aftermath of World War II. This means that to date, there has been no effort in Japan to develop offensive cyberspace capabilities. After more than 60 years, Japan is thinking about changing this restriction. However, this idea is only in the discussion stage, and it will probably be a number of years before the Japanese government makes a serious effort to change this constitutional restriction. As noted, the roots of Japan's cybersecurity evolved from the two distinct spheres of government and private industry. The government sector focused on efforts to develop laws and regulations to govern the security of computerized systems and information, while the private sector has focused on efforts to limit regulatory burden and gradually improve the functionality and security of its own networks. We see similar tensions in the U.S. domestic affairs, which has led to an ongoing partisan divide in the U.S. Congress when it considers cybersecurity legislation. Starting with the Internet's nascent years, cybersecurity in Japan has developed from two distinct and often competing spheres. In the 1980s, emerging encryption technologies and increased reliance on computer networks spurred private industry research related to cybersecurity. During this same time frame, the Japanese government attempted to set regulatory standards for organizations using computer technology. Examples of this include instances in which the Ministry of Trade and Industry, MITI, which has since evolved into the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, METI, issued voluntary guidelines on encryption and the protection of personal information. These guidelines did not provide strong incentives for industry adoption and only applied to government agencies other than on a voluntary basis. Through the late 1990s, MITI demonstrated a tendency to avoid strict regulation. This demonstrated the ministry's belief that strong regulation in this arena could dampen free market competition. During the 1990s, the private sector's research efforts began to mature, especially focused on the use of encryption in the banking sector. In 1992, the Japanese Computer Emergency Response Team Coordination Center, Japan CERT-CC, began as a volunteer task force of the Japan Engineering and Planning Group for IP Networks, JEPG/IP. In 1994, MITI's Budget Commission recognized Japan CERT-CC as a private, non-profit organization. As will be demonstrated later, Japan CERT-CC has been a leading organization in Japan in both private sector and international collaboration efforts. In the 2000s, the focus of the Japanese government sector shifted towards organizations, structures, and internal capacity for cybersecurity. Additionally, Japan strengthens its criminal code and established law enforcement organizations to combat cybercrime. The 2010s saw major shifts in both private and public sectors. Public disclosure of cyber attacks against Japan's defense industrial base led the industry initiatives for threat information sharing and advanced persistent threat research. At the same time, the Japanese government shifted focus from cyber hygiene and cybersecurity towards cyber espionage. This is the first time we see a linkage in Japan between cybersecurity and national security risks at the government level. Over the last 5 years, the Japanese have continued this evolution as they attempt to build defensive capacity within the Ministry of Defense and conduct close coordination with the United States. Japan government sector challenges. The Japanese government sector has faced 3 major challenges in developing effective public policy. Difficulty in unifying disparate municipal laws under one national domestic law, the complexity of designing a regulatory and assistance framework that will remain applicable to current threats and technologies, and difficult in making certain that laws, regulations, and efforts to collaborate with the private sector adequately enforce or inspire sound practices. The government has the additional burden of protecting government sector information and systems. Challenges in this area include developing best practices within government, maintaining functionality, avoiding data leaks, and confronting international security threats. Japan private sector challenges. Japan's private sector has tended to focus on business functionality and reduction of cost, but this has come at the expense of more meaningful cybersecurity practices. The private sector generally only adopts IT-related practices in order to preserve competitiveness and is highly resistant to government guidance on best practices, especially when such guidance is merely voluntary. The industry often focuses on certification or compliance rather than concrete security practices or sound procedures. These challenges are very similar to those faced by the U.S. private sector. Japanese regional leadership. Japan has demonstrated a great deal of regional leadership in cyber hygiene and international collaboration. Japan assisted in the founding of the Asia-Pacific Computer Emergency Response Team, or AppCERT, in 2003 and currently provides the secretariat function for AppCERT. AppCERT was established as a coalition of its member nations' Computer Security Incident Response Team, or CSIRTs, to improve computer incident response approaches throughout the region. Up to the present day, Japan CERT-CC has served as a major leader in AppCERT, acting as a member of the board of directors, maintaining the secretariat for AppCERT, and chairing the organization as of the fall of 2012. Japan has pioneered regional collaboration on responses to politically motivated hacking under the China-Japan-Korea (CJK) Free Trade Agreement. Additionally, Japan stood up the first national center to combat botnets internationally, the Cyber Clean Center. Japanese organizations and structures. The organizational chart on this page shows the current Japanese organizations and structures. The National Information Security Center coordinated overall government efforts with efforts divided between fighting cybercrime, communications and network policies, information technology policies, and national security. Over the next few slides, we will give a brief description of each of these organizations. In April 2005, the National Information Security Center, NISC, was established as a part of the Cabinet Secretariat to form information security policy strategies for Japan. The goal of the NISC is to protect the information security of government organizations while improving the overall level of information security in Japan. NISC's main cybersecurity-related activities include strengthening measures to deal with sophisticated threats to companies and organizations handling important national information on security, maintaining a safe and secure user environment for addressing the emerging risk associated with the proliferation of new information and communications technology, including the full-fledged widespread use of smartphones, and reinforcement of international alliances. The National Police Agency, or NPA, serves as a central coordination agency of the Japanese police system. The NPA does not have any operational units of its own. Instead, its role is to determine general standards and policies, although in national emergencies or large-scale disasters, the agency is authorized to take command of prefectural police forces. The NPA also oversees the Cyber Force Center, the Council to Prevent Unauthorized Communications to Counter Cyber Intelligence, and information sharing with CCI-designated companies. The Cyber Force Center, or CFC, was established in 2001 by the NPA to provide technical support to law enforcement in the cyber domain where, in spite of the Unauthorized Computer Access Law of 2000, or UCAL, there was little national-level enforcement presence. CFC provides law enforcement with cyber forensic capacity and acts as a conduit to assist in transnational police work and collaboration. The Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications, the MIC or MIC, is a cabinet-level ministry in the government of Japan. The ministry oversees Japanese administrative system, manages local governments, elections, telecommunications, postal services, and governmental statistics. The MIC's cybersecurity-related activities include the Cyber Attack Analysis Council, jointly administered with METI, the Information Technology Promotion Agency, or IPA, Japan CERT-CC, the National Institute of Information and Communications Technology, or the NICT, the Telecom Information Sharing and Analysis Center, ISAC, Japan, and Smartphone Information Security. The IPA's three missions are IT security, improving reliability of information processing systems, and IT human resources development. The National Institute of Information and Communications Technology, the NICT, promotes the full spectrum of research and development in ICT from basic to applied research with an integrated perspective, and thus promotes the advancement of Japan as an intellectual nation that leads the international community. The Japan Computer Emergency Response Team Coordination Center, Japan CERT-CC, was established in 1996. Japan CERT-CC was the first Computer Security Incident Response Team, or CSIRT, established in Japan, and acts as a CSIRT of CSIRTs in the Japanese community. In the Asia-Pacific region, Japan CERT-CC helped form the Asia-Pacific Computer Emergency Response Team, APCERT, in 2003, and provides a secretariat function for APCERT. Globally, as a member of the Forum of Incident Response and Security Teams, FIRST, Japan CERT-CC cooperates with the trusted CSIRTs worldwide. Organized as a subordinate organization to Japan CERT-CC, the Cyber Clean Center, CCC, was launched in 2006. CCC actively combats botnets at the national level. It focuses on both raising public awareness and directly notifying victims that their systems are infected with botnets. The Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, METI or METI, is the major Japanese agency involved in the promulgation of cybersecurity standards and regulations for Japanese industry over the last 30 years. METI was previously called the Ministry of International Trade and Industry, MITI. In 1988, MITI issued a law on the protection of personal information held by administrative agencies' computer systems. However, this law only applied to government systems. In 1989, MITI issued the Guidelines for the Protection of Personal Information in the Private Sector. However, the guidelines were purely voluntary and provided no protection to customer data. In 2000, METI issued the Unauthorized Computer Access Law, UCAL, in conjunction with the National Police Agency. Similar to the U.S. Computer Fraud and Abuse Act of 1986, this law added criminal provisions and punishments to the Japanese Criminal Code. The Ministry of Defense is a cabinet-level ministry of the government of Japan. It is headquartered in Ichigaya, Shinjuku, Tokyo, and is the largest organ of the Japanese government. Headed by the Ministry of Defense, the ministry is required by Article 66 of the Constitution to be completely subordinate to civilian authority. Article 9 of the Japanese Constitution outlaws war as a means to resolve international disputes involving the state, and limits the Japanese military to primarily defensive role. As a result of this provision, there has been no effort to date to develop any form of offensive cyber program in Japan to include any form of active defense. Currently, the Ministry of Defense's cybersecurity activities include improving information and telecommunication security systems, reinforcing protection systems, preparing rules and regulations, developing human resources, promoting information sharing, and research and development of the latest technologies. Conclusions. Unlike the United States, Japanese cybersecurity efforts are not traceable to military or intelligence-driven origins. Japan did not begin to link cybersecurity to national security efforts until after the 2011 cyber attacks against its defense industrial base and other government agencies. Japan CERT-CC has proved to be an outstanding example of a public-private partnership and international collaboration, and is a leading cybersecurity organization in the Asia-Pacific region. Japan has become a regional leader in cyber hygiene and international collaboration. Japan's Cyber Clean Center was one of the first national-level efforts to reduce malware. Japan's long-term alliance with the United States has been particularly successful in information sharing. Japan's constitutional restrictions, however, limit efforts to combat threats outside of Japan. Japan has recently begun to look at the possibility of lifting or reinterpreting some of these restrictions, especially in relation to the cyber domain. The United Kingdom. The United Kingdom's cybersecurity and cyber operations programs grew largely out of its intelligence community, and the lion's share of their program remains there today. Even the recently established National Cybersecurity Centre, which was founded to work with private industry, is a subordinate organization to the UK's intelligence community, not its military or law enforcement communities. UK cybersecurity policy, doctrine, and organization evolved through three major waves of innovation. In the 1980s and early 1990s, privatization of British Telecom began a wave of commercial innovation. Additionally, during this time frame, the Falklands and the Persian Gulf Wars highlighted the importance of computer technology in modern military operations. This eventually led to the Network-Enabled Capability Program, which was very similar to the United States network-centric warfare concept. The Strategic Defense Review of 1998 instituted a second wave of innovation and reorganization in the British government and military. Similar to the Goldwater-Nichols Act, instituted in the United States in the 1980s, it created a joint force concept in the British military. It established the Permanent Joint Force Headquarters. It led to the establishment of the Defense Communications Services Agency, which centralized procurement and acquisition. It led to the establishment of the Global Operations Security Control Center and its subordinate Defense Computer Incident Response Team. And it led to the establishment of the Joint Security Control Center, which pioneered the first warning, advice, and reporting point under the WARP program. The National Cybersecurity Strategy of 2013 heralded the third major wave of innovation in British cybersecurity and cyber operations, and led to the reorganization of most of the military and government institutions involved in the cyber domain. It established the National Cybersecurity Center under the Government Communications Headquarters and established its subordinate UK National Computer Emergency Response Team, CERT-UK. It also moved proponency for the WARP program to CERT-UK. During this time frame, the UK also established its National Crime Agency to centralize and coordinate law enforcement activities. It also established the National Cyber Crime Unit to support law enforcement efforts. Evolution of UK cyber. This timeline lays out some of the major events that have characterized the three major waves of innovation in the evolution of the United Kingdom cybersecurity and cyber operations programs. Most of the organizations laid out in Jay Healy's text have changed in the last 4 years as a result of major government reorganization initiated by the National Cybersecurity Strategy of 2013. UK organizations and structures. The organizational chart on this page depicts the current organizations and structures of the United Kingdom. The Office of Cybersecurity and Information Assurance, the OCSIA, coordinates overall government efforts with efforts divided between critical infrastructure protection, fighting crime, intelligence, and national security. Over the next few slides, we will give a brief description of each of these organizations. Note, current UK organizations and structures evolved after 2013 and are not covered in our text. Descriptions are provided in the following slides. Office of Cybersecurity and Information Assurance, OCSIA. The Office of Cybersecurity and Information Assurance supports the Cabinet Office Ministers and the National Security Council in determining priorities in relation to securing cyberspace. The unit provides strategic direction and coordinates the cybersecurity program for the government, enhancing cybersecurity and information assurance in the United Kingdom. The OCSIA works with other lead government departments and agencies such as the Home Office, Ministry of Defense, Government Communications Headquarters, Communications Electronic Security Department, and the Center for the Protection of National Infrastructure. The Center for the Protection of National Infrastructure, or CPNI, was established in 2007. CPNI protects national security by providing advice to the organizations that make up the UK's national infrastructure covering physical, personnel, and cybersecurity. CPNI engages in numerous public-private partnerships within the UK, including the former WARP program, which will be detailed below. National Crime Agency, or NCA. The National Crime Agency is the national law enforcement and police agency in the United Kingdom. It was established in 2013 as a non-ministerial government department. It is the UK's lead agency against organized crime, human, weapon, and drug trafficking, cybercrime, and economic crime that goes across regional and international borders, but can be tasked to investigate any crime. The National Cyber Crime Unit, or NCCU, leads the UK's response to cybercrime, supports partners with specialist capabilities, and coordinates the national response to the most serious of cybercrime threats. NCCU works closely with the regional organized crime units, the Metropolitan Police Cybercrime Unit, and partners with industry, government, and international law enforcement. Ministry of Defence, MOD. The MOD is the British government department responsible for implementing the defence policy set by Her Majesty's government and is the headquarters of the British Armed Forces. The MOD states that its principal objectives are to defend the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland and its interests, and to strengthen international peace and stability. Joint Cyber Unit, JCU. JCU Cheltenham and JCU Corsham are the Ministry of Defence's plugins into GCHQ. Both JCUs work with GCHQ and are co-located with its facilities in Cheltenham and Corsham. JCU Cheltenham develops new tactics, techniques, and plans to deliver military effects through operations in cyberspace. JCU Corsham develops and uses a range of new technologies, including proactive measures to disrupt threats to the UK's information security. Little is publicly known about the joint cyber units. Foreign and Commonwealth Office, FCO. The FCO, commonly called the Foreign Office, is a department of the Government of the UK. It is responsible for protecting and promoting British interests worldwide. It was created in 1968 by merging the Foreign Office and the Commonwealth Office. It is tasked with safeguarding the UK's national security by countering terrorism and weapons proliferation and working to reduce conflict. It supports British nationals around the world through modern and efficient consular services. Government Communications Headquarters, GCHQ. GCHQ is a British intelligence and security organization responsible for providing signals intelligence, SIGINT, and information assurance to the British government and armed forces. The GCHQ is the UK's equivalent of the NSA. It should be noted that unlike its American counterpart, GCHQ is not part of the UK's Ministry of Defence, but it is a subordinate agency to the UK's Foreign Office, along with MI6, the UK's closest analogue to the US CIA. National Cybersecurity Center, NCSC. The NCSC acts as a bridge between industry and government, providing a unified source of advice, guidance, and support on cybersecurity, including the management of cybersecurity incidents. The Queen officially opened NCSC for business in February of 2017. However, the center has been provisionally operating for more than 6 months and had already tackled more than 188 high-level cyber attacks against the UK and its interests at the time of its opening. UK National Computer Emergency Response Team, CERT UK. CERT UK formed in March of 2014 in response to the National Cybersecurity Strategy of 2011. With the new strategy released in 2013, CERT UK has been subsumed by NCSC. CERT UK had 4 main responsibilities which have been taken over by NCSC: National Cybersecurity Incident Management, support to critical national infrastructure companies to handle cybersecurity incidents, promoting cybersecurity situational awareness across industry, academia, and the public sector, providing a single international point of contact for coordination and collaboration between national CERTs. Cybersecurity Information Sharing Partnership, CISP. CISP is a joint industry and government initiative set up to exchange cyber threat information in real time, in a secure, confident, and dynamic environment, increasing situational awareness and reducing the impact on UK business. CISP evolved from a previous program called WARP. The Warning, Advice, and Reporting Point Program, or WARP program, was a cost-effective, public-private trusted environment where members of a community could enhance their information security by sharing cyber threat and vulnerability information. The WARP program was created in 2002 by the National Infrastructure Security Coordination Center, NISCC, now part of the Center for Protection of National Infrastructure, CPNI, to allow WARP members to receive and share up-to-date cyber threat information and share best practices. The CIS program recently contributed to the mitigation of the highly publicized WannaCry ransomware attack. Marcus Hutchins, a 22-year-old self-taught programmer who blogs under the name Malware Tech, is a member of the CIS program in the UK. Information sharing in the CIS program allowed Marcus to gather information he needed to analyze the malware and develop the kill switch that ultimately was able to slow down the spread of the virus by sinkholing its command and control domain. Conclusions. It is important to understand that other nations have each evolved their approaches to cybersecurity and cyber operations based on their own histories, policies, challenges, and national perspectives. Japan illustrates an evolution much more centered on private industry and almost entirely divorced from their military and intelligence communities. Japan's approach embraces cyber hygiene and regional and international collaboration. The UK illustrates an evolution very much centered on their intelligence community, but with unique public-private partnerships for sharing threat information. This is Professor Scott Applegate. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson on other national perspectives in cybersecurity. Please feel free to contact me if you have any specific questions in regards to this lesson.